lovely people, welcome back to another Story Study Saturday. I'm Sammi and I'm a writer who likes to learn about writing through reading and share what I learn with you. This week, I want to talk to you about The Blackmailer's Guide to Love, which is one of those books that kind of just draws you in because of the title and the cover, or at least that's what happened to me. I honestly don't remember how I found this book, why I found this book, or why I wanted to read this book. I never read the summary, and I am here. I read it because the title and the cover were like, you should read that. That's going to be good for you. You should definitely read it. So here we are. So if you are unlike me and you would like a summary of the story, I will now read the one that I wrote down. Mel Fleischer is in the happiest years of her life, married contentedly to the love of her life, working as an assistant to a celebrity editor of a magazine, and gradually dipping her toes into the world of being a published short story writer. When she discovers that her boss is a serial adulterer, she has the hardest time dealing with the knowledge and comprehending her emotional urge to butt in and tell his wife. That is until she experiences a very similar pain. So let's get into my thoughts on this book. I really connected with Mel, like in a weird way. She has a lot of factors about herself that I directly relate to, and it's super weird because the things that were going wrong in her life, I really desperately do not want to go wrong in my life, and it created this whole mental thing while I was reading where I was so defensive of Mel and so protective of Mel because I was like, I am Mel. Mel and me are the same. And that's both a coincidence and very good writing because she is just general enough that a lot of people can probably relate to her, but also specific enough that she feels like a very real person. I also adored the emotions, the emotional responses to things that the characters felt. They were very fully fleshed out, and you can tell that the characters are feeling the emotions. And on top of that, the empathy that I felt for Mel made me feel vehemently angry on behalf of her for things that she did not know were going on, because that's how I think Mel would have responded to them. And I think the feeling of that absolutely, totally pure hatred was really impressive because it took me from feeling sorry for another character to me kind of wanting them to get hit by a bus. So the fact that I could have that total 180 where I was like, I want this person's life to get better to I want this person to no longer have one. Like, that is a big switch, and it takes a lot of maneuvering to do that effectively, to move somebody from feeling positively towards a character to how negatively I felt about a character. I think the use of multiple perspectives really helped build out the narrative and the story and the world and give you all of those emotions and all of the empathy, allow you to have the moments to feel the empathy. I think it's the only way that this story could have been told effectively was with multiple perspectives, because you had to be able to empathize with all of the characters until you chose your team, basically. And once you get to the point where in the story you have to choose a team, the book chooses the team with you, which is also really interesting. So instead of cycling through all three of the main characters back to back, character A, character B, character C, once you hit the point where you feel like you have to choose a side, you get like character A, character B, character A, character A, character A, character C, character A, and you really get to stick with that part of the story to feel with her. And I think that that made it way more impactful than it would have if it was told from one perspective the whole time. So what do I think could be improved about this story? I didn't like the tense that the story was written in. It was written in this weird, like, semi-current, semi-future perspective, semi-in the moment, but also semi-looking back on the situation, where you'd have these moments where you're like doing something and Mel's thinking about writing a short story, or there was an example of Mel wrote a short story and then somebody reached out to her and was like, we're really looking forward to publishing your book. And then she was thinking in the moment, like, I don't want to write a book. I don't want to write a novel. I'm a short story writer. My stories are short. That's the kind of story I tell. It's not a novel. And then like a paragraph later or so, we get like, she would go on to write a novel and publish a novel. And it's like, okay, why? Why did we need to jump into the future? And that happened so many times that the first time it happened, I was like, this is weird. I don't know if I like that. And then it kept happening and I was like, yeah, I don't like it. at all. I don't understand why we need to have that glimpse into the future if the present is where the conflict is. And like, I don't know that adding the things from the future gave me something to the present of the story that made it more impactful. A lot of the times it was just about like Mel's career and Mel's home life in the future. And I would rather have not had that. Maybe had all of those things in like an epilogue rather than in the middle of a scene that is really engaging and in the moment and present, and then throwing me into the future for a sentence or two and then pulling me back and trying to get settled back into that very active, very connected present, because I'm now disconnected because you threw me into the future. There were also a lot of moments that didn't feel like they were landing the right way. Like they didn't have as much of an emotional impact as other scenes, and it felt like they didn't matter as much as the scenes that were making those big emotional impacts, and it threw me out a lot of times where I was like, why are we here? Why does this matter? Why do we keep coming back to this? What is the point of this? Why are we looking at this? And a lot of those were scenes between Mel and her boss, and I don't know why they were in there, because it doesn't establish like a relationship that is important. It establishes a relationship that's there between like her and her boss, not anything more specific than like that work-life relationship. It doesn't feel like it adds anything the way that the scenes where he's at a distance add more to the story, add more to who Mel is, add more to our understanding of who Mel is and her understanding of the world. When she interacted with him, it didn't really land. And it felt like it was supposed to land very hard for a few of those interactions, but it just didn't. He was more impactful when other people were talking about him than he was when he was directly talking to Mel. So I didn't understand. I didn't really like those, and I probably would have changed them or made them happen a lot less frequently, where it's like, clearly you're going to interact with your boss and your boss is going to talk to you, but do we need this many times in a story? Because when you're writing something for the sake of entertainment, you should put in the most entertaining parts. And that's why we don't read small talk in most books. But what can writers learn from this book? This is a really, really great story of emotional presentation. It is really clear with how the characters are feeling, why they're feeling that way, what triggered them to feel that way, how they respond in those situations, what they show to other people when they are feeling that way, and how other people perceive it. Because we've got the multiple perspectives, and it's really, really well done. It's also a great example of building and then destroying empathy readers have for characters, because let me tell you, that went way out the window. And I consider myself a very empathetic person. Like, I feel for other people very often. And the fact that I literally lost all of my empathy for this character, that was, because the character has a lot of problems, a lot of damage that came to her. And I can relate to some of it. And like, I can empathize with a lot of it. But the fact that she used all of those problems to supply a reason to be a terrible person, you lose all of it. And it's done so smoothly that I am so impressed by it. And it's a great example of building out a character that you know enough about that you can hate them fully. Because there's a lot of potential to make a character that's easy to hate because they do bad things. But if you make a character that is fully rounded and they have reasons, they have potential to be a good person, and then they choose to do the wrong thing, and they keep choosing to do the wrong thing, and they think they're entitled to doing the wrong thing, it is so effective to getting your readers to have real emotions towards that character. It's also a really good example of small scale, big stakes, where all of these stakes are within the realm of 3 people for this story. All of the stakes only affect 3 people, but they feel huge, and they feel like they are world-ending stakes, but they aren't. They're very localized, and it's a very great example of that. I also think it's a really interesting example of a love story, because a lot of love stories are based on people falling in love and the start of a relationship. And there's hardly any that are about like the continuation of a relationship, the being in a happy relationship or keeping a happy relationship up and running and relying on the trust of your relationship partner and that kind of thing, which I think is interesting because you don't ever see that. It's always people falling in love, and that's an interesting place to look at it. And it's a thought provoker for sure, how can you use a happily married couple to build out a story that's interesting. But that is all that I've got for you today. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. It'll really help me out. If you have any books that you want me to check out, leave me a comment down below and I will take a look, see if I can get them into a Story Study Saturday. And if you don't want to miss any of my uploads, hit that subscribe button. I'm here every Tuesday and Saturday for Writing Tip Tuesdays and Story Study Saturdays. But I will see you guys on Tuesday for a Writing Tip Tuesday and then back again here for another Story Study Saturday.